We won't let you win.
Mr. Derek walked in through the door angry that day. Stress was eating him up after a long, tiring day at work. He pushed through the front door unannounced, ready to collapse into the silence and grief that had swallowed his house 2 years ago. 2 years had passed since his wife died immediately after childbirth, leaving him alone to raise the boys. Since that day, the house had known only quiet, tears, and memories. But then he heard it. Laughter. His son's laughter echoed through the living room. Mr. Derek froze. That sound had not filled his house in a very long time. He dropped his briefcase slowly and listened again, afraid it might disappear. The laughter was real, bright, innocent, and full of life. His heart tightened as confusion washed over him. He walked further inside and stopped at the doorway. There were his boys, rolling on the floor, laughing freely. Standing with them was a young woman, smiling gently as she wiped her hands on her apron. The boys clung to her dress, calling her name happily. For the first time in 2 years, Mr. Derek felt something he thought he had lost forever. Hope. Tears burned his eyes as he realized something important. His house was no longer empty, and his sons were healing, even if he had not yet allowed himself to. The day began like every other day. Mr. Derek sat alone in his office, lost in thought as he drank quietly. He had spent the night there again. Going home no longer felt like home, it only reminded him of his wife, who had died moments after childbirth. The silence of his mansion was unbearable, but somehow, the silence of his office felt safer. All night he sat awake, replaying memories of a life that once overflowed with laughter. A home that once felt warm now felt as quiet as a graveyard. Left alone to raise their triplets, Liam, Noah, and Oliver, he no longer knew how to reach them. They were alive but unreachable. Just like him. As the sun rose, exhaustion finally pushed him to leave. He decided to go home. The drive felt longer than usual. His mind was restless, heavy, unable to find peace. Every red light felt like a pause in his grief. Every turn brought him closer to a house that felt empty even when occupied. But when he finally reached the door, something stopped him. Laughter. Uncontrollable laughter. Real laughter. Pure laughter. It hit his chest so suddenly that his heart skipped. Slowly he opened the door, and the sight in front of him froze him in place. His sons Liam, Noah, and Oliver were laughing. Actually laughing. They hadn't laughed in 2 years. Not since their mother died. Since that day, they had become ghosts in their own home, too afraid to make noise, too broken to remember what happiness felt like. But now, Liam and Noah sat on the back of a young woman, their faces glowing with joy. A rope was tied securely around her waist, and little Oliver stood in front of her, gripping the other end and pulling with all his strength, laughing as loudly as his tiny lungs allowed. The woman laughed with them, as if the outside world didn't exist. Mr. Derek couldn't move. He didn't dare breathe too loudly, afraid the moment might disappear if disturbed. This woman, a total stranger, had only started working a few days ago. She had come after the elderly nanny who had cared for the boys for years, finally quit, unable to bear watching the children slowly drown in sorrow. And then he noticed something else. A Bible lay close to the woman Emily, the new nanny. The same Bible she had carried on her first day. The same Bible she held tightly while standing outside the mansion, refusing to step inside until she finished praying. Emily laughed freely with the boys. Her joy genuine, effortless. How had she done this? How had she reached the child who woke most nights screaming and crying? Who stared into empty space as if seeing their mother's ghost? Who barely ate? Who all the money in the world couldn't heal? Mr. Derek had taken them to the best doctors, therapists, and specialists money could buy, yet none of them had achieved this. The frustration on his face melted into something else. Gratitude. Then Emily noticed him. The laughter vanished from her eyes instantly. Fear replaced it. She thought she had done something wrong. The boys turned too, their smiles fading as they met their father's gaze. Not wanting to break the moment, Mr. Derrick forced a gentle smile. "Continue," he said softly. "Then come see me in my study when you're done." And with that, he turned and walked away. This was a miracle, and he was not about to ruin it. As he walked away, Mr. Derrick's mind was in chaos. How could someone without a medical degree achieve what years of doctors, therapists, and specialists never could despite the millions he had spent? He had followed every professional instruction, signed every check, chased every possible solution. And yet, a woman with nothing but patience, prayer, and love had reached his children in days. Was God real? Was this one of those miracles people spoke about miracles? He had dismissed as coincidence or weakness. For the first time in years, the question lingered in his heart instead of his mind. That evening, when he finally made his way to the dining room, something unexpected stopped him again. The table was already set. Emily sat with the boys, their plates of food placed neatly in front of them. Their little hands were joined together, heads bowed. Emily's lips moved quietly as she prayed, her voice calm and gentle. The boys followed her lead, clumsy but sincere. Mr. Derrick didn't interrupt. He simply stood there, watching. After the prayer, Emily began feeding them herself, patiently encouraging them between bites. No pressure, no force, just warmth. The boys ate willingly, even eagerly. Then it happened. Liam turned his head toward him. "Daddy," a word landed like thunder. Mr. Derrick froze. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. His throat tightened and his vision blurred. He hadn't heard that word in 2 years, not since the day he buried his wife, and lost himself along with her. Emily noticed the change immediately. She gently wiped Liam's mouth and smiled at Mr. Derrick, giving him space, understanding the weight of the moment without needing words. That night, something shifted. Healing did not arrive loudly in the Derrick household. It came quietly, disguised as routine. Emily understood something no doctor had. Explained broken hearts needed safety before they could heal. So she brought consistency. Every morning began the same way. Soft voices, open curtains, gentle prayers spoken without pressure. Playtime followed, then meals eaten together at the same table, at the same time every day. At first, the boys resisted sleep. Their bodies were tired, but their minds were still afraid. Emily stayed with them through the night, humming softly, praying silently, never rushing away. Slowly, the nights grew quieter. The screaming faded. One night turned into 2, then into a full week. For the first time in 2 years, the boys slept through the night. Then came expression. The silence that once filled the house began to crack. Words returned hesitant at first, then stronger. Laughter followed, louder than before, as if it had been stored up for years. And when tears came, Emily never stopped them. She never told them to be strong. She never shushed their pain. She listened. Sometimes she listened to words. Other times, she listened to sobs. And sometimes, she simply listened to silence. Connection came next. Without realizing it, the boys began drifting toward their father. They sat beside him instead of across the room. Small hands slipped into his without warning. They leaned their heads against his legs while he worked. Mr. Derrick felt it every time. Acceptance was the hardest part. One quiet evening, Oliver looked up from his toys and asked, "Where is Mommy?" The room stilled. Emily didn't rush the answer. She knelt beside him, her voice calm and steady. She spoke of love, of heaven, of a mother who was still watching over them. She spoke honestly, without fear. The boys cried, but they did not break. They cried together. And when the tears ended, they curled into Emily's arms and slept peacefully, as if something heavy had finally been set down. Then came joy. The house no longer echoed, it lived. Toys scattered the hallways. Footsteps ran where silence once ruled. Laughter filled rooms that had felt like tombs. The mansion was no longer haunted by grief. And Mr. Derek? He healed too. Not all at once. Not perfectly. He joined the prayers not because faith came easily, but because hope had returned. He laughed, sometimes awkwardly, as if relearning the sound. He ate meals at the table instead of alone. And one night, without realizing it, he slept in his own bed. For the first time since loss entered their lives, the Derek family was no longer surviving. They were living. Weeks later, Mr. Derek called Emily into his study. She stood nervously, hands folded, ready to apologize for something she didn't know she had done. Instead, he stood up. "I don't want you to think of yourself as a maid," he said slowly. "Or even a nanny." She looked confused. "You brought my children back to life," he continued, his voice thick. "You brought me back too." Tears filled Emily's eyes. "I want you to stay," he said. "Not as staff, as family. This will always be your home if you want it." Emily covered her mouth, overwhelmed. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. Mr. Derek smiled a real smile. "Say yes." She nodded. Yes. From that day on, Emily was no longer just an employee. She was family. And for the first time since loss shattered their world, the Derek household wasn't just the house again. It was a home.